Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Yes, America's anchorman is away, and this is your undocumented anchorman, Mark Stein, sitting in, honored to be here. I snuck into the country this morning. I came in through the Russian back channel. It's so easy if you do it that way. Rush is away. I was listening. I got to get this out of the way. I was just because people are mad if they think this is true. Rush yesterday said he was absolutely gagging to be here. He was longing to be here, but that the powers that be had already booked the guest host, so that he couldn't pull out. He couldn't pull back in. He couldn't come in and guest host for the pre-scheduled guest host. That is not true. It's not this, and people got the wrong impression of this. They thought it means that if there's a guest host scheduled and Rush comes in the building, he's intercepted in the lobby, and they say, "Please, sir, don't make us call security," and Rush has to go away again. If Rush wanted to be here, he would be here, but he has business and he cannot be here. And it's nothing to do with pre-scheduling the guest host and not wanting to kick him out at the last minute, because it's going to be 3 years in binding arbitration to settle the guest host's breach of contract suit. None of that is true. Don't worry about that. Rush will return, but in the meantime, I am thrilled and honored to be here on an exciting day at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 noon Pacific. President Trump is going to announce his decision on the Paris Climate Accord, and for God's sake, I hope we pull out. This is not a difficult call, and it should be very, very easy for the president to make this one. He was rightly contemptuous of it all the way along the campaign trail. It is a ridiculous thing. And I hope that he's waiting to hear what we have to say here on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network, and that's why he's waiting till 3 o'clock Eastern to announce it. But I hope that if he's in any doubt, I hope after the next 3 hours he is confirmed in his instincts from the campaign trail and he pulls out of this thing. Give us a call on that. If you like the Paris Climate Accord, we're going to break it all down for you. It's hardly worth breaking down. The whole thing is a racket. And the fact that 193 countries are in it doesn't mean anything. Breaking news, by the way, New York City has announced, Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, has announced that even if the United States pulls out of the Paris Climate Accord, New York City is going to stay in. I don't even know how that works. And you can enlighten me on this because I'm the unassimilated foreigner here, but I thought it was the Senate that actually ratified treaties, but apparently it's the mayor of New York. So if Trump pulls out of the Paris Climate Accord, Bill de Blasio has said New York City is still staying in. So we're going to have sanctuary cities for climate change now. And the... New York, well, you're right, Mike. I mean, all over the planet, people are saying, "Oh, that's great. As long as New York, is in, that's fine." Palm Springs staying in the Paris Climate Accord. If your town is staying in the Paris Climate Accord, this is great. So we're going to do it. They said 193 countries have signed this so-called thing. But apparently cities can also sign it, so it's 193 countries plus New York City that are committed to the Paris Climate Accord. The only countries that haven't signed it are Syria and Nicaragua. And now the United States is going to be the third. And that is the all-time greatest coalition of the unwilling. Syria, Nicaragua, and the United States. They're going to go down in history. That's like the Allies in World War II. Bring it on. 3 p.m. Eastern. Go for it, Mr. President, and let's get the hell out of this thing. If you feel differently, give me a call, 1-800-282-2882. I always love talking to the big climate mullers. If you're one of these big climate guys and you're not interested in climate denial and you want to play smash mouth on it, give us a call, 1-800-282-2882. It's fascinating to watch the news and see that the networks are really kind of nervous about this. because they've interrupted their wall-to-wall Russia coverage to warn Trump of the dangers of pulling out of this Paris Climate Accord. I don't, as I understand it, Mr. Snerdley, I don't know why Vladimir would order the United States to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord, because Vlad signed on to it, and also because the whole thing is to bankrupt the United States, which you would think would be in Vladimir's interest. So if the whole Paris Climate Accord thing is part of the Russian thing, I don't quite get that. Jean-Claude Juncker, who is this man, he's this, I don't know whether you've heard of him, he's this curious Luxembourger who has a business card saying President of Europe on it. But Jean-Claude Juncker, who purports to be President of Europe, has told Trump, you can't just pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. It takes 3 to 4 years. You know, he told, when the United Kingdom voted to pull out of the European Union, he told them that takes 2 years. To pull out of the Paris Climate Accord apparently takes twice as long as to pull out of the European Union. So Jean-Claude Juncker, and don't laugh at him just because he's gone to Kinko and had a business card printed saying he's President of Europe. Don't laugh at him just because of that. He used to be Foreign Minister of Luxembourg. You know, I mean, he is a player. So Jean-Claude Juncker, the former Foreign Minister of Luxembourg, has now warned Trump it could take 4 years to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. If it was a treaty, a real treaty, and of course it's not a treaty, don't worry, it's not a treaty, it's an accord. It's an accord. It's like the Honda Accord. No one mistakes that for a treaty. So that's the luxury model, the Honda Treaty. The Climate Accord, the Paris Climate Accord takes 4 years to pull out of, according to Jean-Claude Juncker, the powerful alleged president of Europe. Go and do it, Mr. President. For God's sake, this is an easy one. I accept that all the other stuff, you know, yeah, Obamacare, that's difficult. Building a wall, that's complicated. That takes time. This is easy. It's a piece of nonsense, this. It's exactly the kind of poser, conventional wisdom, transnational garbage politics you were opposed to. You represented the antidote to this pointless, stupid attitude-striking thing, where grown men purport to tell you what the planet's thermostat is going to be in 2100. This is exactly the nonsense that you ran against. It's the bedrock of your campaign, that instead of the less relevance anything has to people's lives, the more the transnational do-gooder class invests in it. So this is exactly what your campaign was about, what you ran against. And I'm sorry for supposed family members and members of your administration who are worried that it's going to accept, if you pull out, it's going to upset former Luxembourg foreign ministers. It's too bad. They can all get together. They can go to a Luxembourg foreign minister therapy group and they can all sit around sobbing. But this is an easy one. It's nothing real. It's the worst kind of transnational poser politics in which wealthy nations, they say 193 countries have signed on to it. How do you think that happened? Because for the big ones like China and India, they're not going to do anything. They've got some commitment, you know, we're going to reduce the rate of the increase of the rate of the lowering of the rate of the increase of the lowering of the rate of emissions around about the year 2070. And meanwhile, all the third world basket case dictatorships are just being bribed by the wealthy nations to string along with it. The United States can take a stand for meaningful international relations and say, no, we're not signing this kind of poser garbage anymore. So go, if you're in any doubt, Mr. President, just go for it. Everyone who wants your administration to succeed supports you pulling out of this thing, and everyone who wants your administration to fail is in favor of staying in. So just go ahead and make us all happy about this. We will talk about that. 1-800-282-2882. The other big thing, Hillary had this amazing. She was speaking at a tech conference. What's it called? It's the Code Conference, something like that. out on the West Coast. It's a big tech conference. Why you would ask Hillary to speak at a tech conference, I have no idea, because Hillary is so low tech that she, by her own admission, she wipes her server with a cloth. So you would not think that anything she has to say would be of interest to a tech conference. But in fact, she was at this tech conference yesterday, and she unburdened herself of all the excuses. The reasons she lost, the excuses have got longer and longer and longer. And they still don't include her. But she blamed the Russians. She blamed the misogyny of the American people. She blamed Wisconsin's voter ID laws. She blamed the DNC, who are apparently broke and have a lousy data mining operation. And my personal favorite, Hillary Clinton blamed content farms in Macedonia. And I'd never actually heard any American politician blame their electoral defeat before on content farms in Macedonia. As it happens, my grandfather used to be a content farmer in Macedonia. He came from a long line of Macedonian content farmers. And then one day he got on the boat to Ellis Island, and he opened the first Macedonian deli on the Lower East Side. And then that's how we came to North America. And but I won't forget that growing up as a child. My grandfather would like to sit on the porch, and he'd get out his gadulka, and he'd play the old Macedonian content farming songs. And it was just a wonderful time just to listen to him singing songs of the old content farmers in Macedonia. And now to hear that Hillary is blaming her electoral defeat on content farms in Macedonia. These are the most powerful content farmers on the planet, because they can reach out for Macedonia and utterly destroy a smooth, well-oiled machine like the Hillary Clinton campaign. I think we definitely need a 7-year investigation. We need a special prosecutor to be appointed to look into Macedonian content farmers, and that should take up the next 3, 4, 7, 12 years, however long it takes. I call on a special prosecutor to be appointed to look into the Macedonian content farmers who stole the election from Hillary. If you're a Macedonian content farmer, put down your gadulka and give us a call. 1-800-282-2882. Mark Stein in for Rush. Lots more still to come. Everybody is upset about this. The New York Times warns the U.S. is the biggest carbon polluter in history. Will it walk away from the Paris climate deal? And they've got a quote here saying it's immoral, said Mohammed Adaw. And I had do you know who Mohammed Adaw is? If you do know who Mohammed Adaw is, call 1-800-282-2882, and you could win the free Paris Climate Honda Accord we're giving away today. It is immoral, said Mohammed Adaw, and I didn't know who he was, but the New York Times explains that he grew up herding livestock in Kenya, and he now works in London as a leader on climate issues. I don't know how that works. 1 minute you're herding livestock in Kenya, and then somebody says, hey, look, there's a job opening in London for a leader on climate issues. But that's what Mohammed Adaw has done. And he said what the Americans are doing is immoral, pulling out of this Paris Climate Accord. As I said, this is an easy call for Trump. And everyone who wants his presidency to succeed wants to be out of this thing. No one that he can kiss up to is going to be impressed by him staying in the Paris Climate Accord for more than 20 minutes. All this fellow, what's he called, the Tesla guy, Elon Musk? All these guys. He can stay in the Paris Climate Accord, and he'll get some bonus points with Elon Musk, and 15 minutes later they'll all be condemning him for something else, and they'll all still want him to fail. And Hillary's great whine-a-thon at this tech conference she was speaking at, was actually, people say she shouldn't be doing this. The Democrats want her to go away. She's on this big loser tour, excuse tour, whining tour. Every stop on the tour, the list of excuses as to why she lost got longer and longer and longer. And I'm thankful to her for doing that, because it reminds us of just how effective Trump was on the stump. She lost. One reason she lost, she didn't mention this at the tech conference yesterday, is that she was campaigning 2 days a week. Trump was working 7 days a week. He was doing rallies all over the place. He'd do a rally in the morning in New Hampshire, and then he'd get on the plane and he'd fly to Wisconsin and he'd do a rally there, and then he'd get on the plane and do a rally. She would take weeks off from campaigning at a time. She would take weeks off from giving interviews. She worked, she spent more money and worked less than almost any other candidate who has ever run for president. The ratio of spending to the participation of the candidate, because she had to be protected, because she had to have a security clearance even to get into her events, she gave very few events. When she did them, she was with big stars like Beyonce, things that cost a fortune, require massive organization. If it's a choice between, if you're thinking of running for president and you're thinking of getting a lot of big shot celebrities like Beyonce, or you're thinking of getting a lot of, 3 or 4 content farmers from Macedonia, as she's now complaining about, go with the content farmers from Macedonia. That's the way to win an American election. Anyway, I love listening to her whining, because it, as I said, it reminds everybody of how effective Trump was on the campaign. And I generally agree with Rush's diagnosis in recent days that it's the Republican Party and the Republican establishment that is the main obstacle to Trump at the moment. The Democrats and the left are irrelevant. They're just going around, they're holding up severed heads of Trump, and they're threatening to impeach him and all the rest of it. But they're basically irrelevant. They're just driving themselves into an ever more fevered corner where they're all swinging around their severed Trump heads and thinking it's kind of great and edgy and cool and talking about impeachment. But they're irrelevant. The practical obstacle to advancing his agenda right now comes from the so-called Republican, so-called mainstream. And that's why it's good to be reminded by Hillary of just how great he was on the stump. When he worked harder, and he was effective because of his instincts. And his instincts on the Paris Climate Accord are right. It's a joke. It's an expensive joke. It's a racket. And there is nothing for the United States in going along with it. This is an easy call, and I hope that at 3 p.m. Eastern, seconds after this show ends, he walks out in Washington, D.C., and he announces that the United States is through with this one-man accord that Barack Obama negotiated with 193 other countries. Let's get out of it. Yes, Rush is away, but don't worry. He is going to return. If you miss him, you have no need to be discombobulated by sinister foreign guest hosts. If you go to rushlimbaugh.com and become a Rush 24/7 subscriber, better yet, take out the full package and subscribe not just to Rush 24/7, but also to the Limbaugh letter, which comes in the mail every month. And I'm looking at the brand new June issue because we got terrible mail service in my remote coin. The dog sled only gets through once every 10 days. And so I've still got the May issue, which had a terrific interview between Rush and Tucker Carlson. And I was handed the June issue when I walked in here today. And it's got Rush on the cover with the big question, and Rush leaning against a huge giant question mark. Why are the losers still running the show? And it's just It's what Russia's been talking about the last couple of days. But somewhere toward the back of the magazine, page 13, he's got, "Why should anyone vote Republican?" He's got this killer quote from Senator Cornyn of Texas. "We can't pass anything without Democrats." Doesn't matter, folks. We were told, first of all, we've got to get the House, right? Then we got to get the Senate. And okay, we got the House, we can't do anything. We got the House and the Senate, we can't do anything. So we got to get the White House. We got the House, the Senate. We got the White House. We still can't do anything. We got to get the Supreme Court. We got the Supreme Court judge. We got the new judge guy there. We got the House. We got the Senate. We got the presidency. We got the Supreme Court. We still can't do anything. We still need Democrats. Why are the losers still running the show? The big question. The big question, and that's in the Limbaugh letter, this brand new June edition. If you don't subscribe to the Limbaugh letter, you are missing out. Go to rushlimbaugh.com, and if you do, by the way, they've made some changes, and I can't handle change anymore. I've reached that stage in life. I just can't. Yeah, I used to talk about I'd say I'm a foreign exchange student at the Limbaugh Institute for the Advanced Conservative Studies. And he's now changed the name of it, Rush has, after whatever it is, 25, 30 years. It's now the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Anti-Leftist Studies. So he's changed the name of it, and he's got a brand new fancy-looking car magnet. And if you subscribe today to Rush 24/7, or the Limbaugh letter, the full package, you can get Rush 24/7 and the Limbaugh letter in one great super bargain package. You need never be discombobulated by sinister foreign guest hosts ever again. It's like he's always here. It's like he's in the air. He's like climate change. If you're a Rush 24/7 subscriber, it's like the CO2. It's all around you, any time of the day or night. So just go to rushlimbaugh.com and become a Rush 24/7 subscriber. The climate change accord, we're waiting on that. I like the way no one calls it. I'm with this guy Juncker, by the way, Jean-Claude Juncker, this Luxembourg powerhouse, who's got the business card saying President of Europe, and has now told Trump, he slapped Trump down, this former Luxembourg foreign minister. If you've ever been in a bar with former Luxembourg foreign ministers, you'll know they're tough hombre. This former Luxembourg foreign minister, Jean-Claude Juncker, he slapped Trump around and said, "Listen, you weenie, you think you can just pull out of this Paris Climate Accord? It's going to take you 4 years to get out of it. It's going to be your successor who's actually getting out of it by the time he's out of it." That's how you dummies don't understand it. You think you can check out any time you like, but you can never leave, baby. This is the hotel. That's why we didn't call it a treaty. Because a treaty you can get out of. But this is an accord, and you can't get out of an accord. It's like being in a Honda Accord where all the doors are jammed and locked. You know, when you drive into the Chappaquiddick waters and you can't open the doors. That's what the Paris Climate Accord is like. And so Juncker has now told Trump, forget it. You're never going to get out of there. You're wasting your time. You're still going to be halfway through your second term. You ain't going to have a second term, baby. So forget it. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. You can't. Well, you're just supposed to sit back and enjoy it, Mr. Snerdley. You cannot. You're just along for the ride. You're trapped in the Paris Climate Honda Accord that the other 193 countries are taking for a crazy joyride. It's like it's the Paris Climate Honda Accord hybrid. They've got 193 drivers on that thing, and you're in the back seat, and you ain't. It's a 2-door car, and you ain't getting out of there. And that's no doesn't mean no. This is that's what I love about it. For a start, they keep saying I love the way the talking points now. It's like everybody's reading off the same prompter. Oh, there's 193 countries in this accord, and the only two who aren't are Syria and Nicaragua. And Syria is only in it. It wasn't in it because they're in the middle of a civil war. So the department that signs the Paris Climate Accord got droned either by us or by the Russians, and so there was nobody there in the rubble to sign it. And the other country that didn't sign it was Nicaragua because it didn't go far enough. They want extreme Paris Climate Accord. They think this Paris Climate Accord is for wussies. So Nicaragua didn't sign on to it. So Nicaragua wants a stronger Paris. We're not wasting our time with this panty-waist, milquetoast, stupid climate accord that you've signed. We want something real with some teeth to it. And Syria didn't sign it because the guy was about to sign it, and at that point ISIS beheaded him or whatever it was. So that's why they didn't sign it. And so effectively they're saying America is going to be the one place on the planet that is not going to sign it. Great. Because this is why politics is despised by people, things like this climate deal. In fact, I'm looking at MSNBC now. The guy who's been suing me for 5 years was just on there. He's the guy who invented the climate hockey stick, which said that in the late 1990s, that said that it showed the last 1,000 years as a flat, unchanging line. Nothing had happened for a millennium. All right, and then Donald Trump opens up a big-time casino in Atlantic City and gets an SUV, and woof, the temperature disappears up straight out the top right-hand corner of the graph and into the stratosphere, and we're all going to fry. And none of it happened. There's been actually no warming for 20 years now. No warming. But nevertheless, these guys say, well, we're very concerned about sea levels in the Maldives in the year 2100. And if you say to them, well, right now we've got, people are going to Ariana Grande concerts and getting blown up. Could you do something about that? Oh, no, that would be absurd. We can't do anything about that. The mayor of London says that's just a fact of life. The mayor of New York says that's just the way it is. The Prime Minister of France says if you're a priest at Mass in France and you happen to get decapitated, that's just the way. We can't do anything about it. It's a natural phenomenon. It would be unreasonable. Get used to it. This is the way it is. But sea levels in the Maldives in the year 2100, that we can do something about. This is why people despise the political class, because they're posers who strike attitudes, generally speaking, dealing with things that are beyond their capacity and nothing to do with them. And so we have a situation where people say it would be unreasonable to expect anyone to enforce the southern border of the United States. That's pie in the sky. But changing the very heavens, that we can do. And that is exactly what Trump ran against, and that is why at 3 p.m. Eastern, he needs to be announcing that he's out of this thing. And the fact that Bill de Blasio says, he's still going to, New York City is still going to be part of the Paris Climate Accord. So there's going to be 193 countries plus an American municipality that have now, because I checked and apparently I can't find any Australian bush communities that have signed on to the Paris Climate Accord. I can't find a village in the jungles of Papua New Guinea that has signed on to the Paris Climate Accord, but apparently it's 193 countries plus one U.S. municipality, which is New York City. Bill de Blasio, he's saying, we don't care what the United States government does. We're still going to go down the economic toilet in the cause of saving the planet in the year 2100. This is something that the president needs to get out of. It's easy to do. You would hearten and enthuse those who believe in modesty and sanity in the goals of flesh and blood politicians. There's no point worrying about what sea levels in the Maldives are going to be like in 2100 because it's a sunny Muslim country, so they're all going to be living in Paris and London by the year 2100, whatever the sea levels are like there. So don't worry about it. Mark Stein in for Rush. We're going to take your calls straight ahead. Mark Stein in for Rush. As you know, Hillary Clinton blamed her election loss on content farms in Macedonia. If you are a Macedonian content farmer, and we all love the traditional Macedonian content farming, it's a great. I certainly hope that's protected in the Paris Climate Accord, because I'm concerned that rising temperatures could jeopardize some of these beautiful old content farms they have in Macedonia. So if you're a Macedonian content farmer, give us a call, 1-800-282-2882. Let us go to Raleigh, North Carolina, where Richard is live on America's #1 radio show. Great to have you with us, Richard.
Hi, Mark. Always a pleasure hearing you using your rapier-sharp wit skewering hapless liberal types.
That's great. I love all that rapier skewering. That's good. My sword feels very blunt some days, so that's nice to hear.
But you keep trying. One thing I wanted to thank you and Rush for was you're constantly casting the truth about climate change. I used to be a Reagan Democrat, and thanks to listening to Rush and other staunch conservatives like yourself, I was woken up, came out of the stupor induced by the mainstream media, kind of like a fly escaping from amber. And I realized all the lies I'd been told, including the enormity of the global warming, climate change, whatever they want to call it now, lie. And that's the one thing. I mean, I was totally convinced. I believed everything they said, the end of the world. I just accepted it. No question. But I started listening to Rush, and then I started reading. It took me about 2.5 months. I read everything on both sides,
right,
and I realized it was a lie. And I remember being so stunned at the enormity of the lie. It was like as palpable as being punched in the solar plexus.
Yeah.
And I was stunned, and then I got very angry that I'd been lied to.
Well, you're right to be angry, because what it is it's something you should always be aware of. It's a very malign alliance between a relatively narrow branch of science and big government. And what they did with the climate is they basically eliminate. If you talk to young people now, they've no idea that the climate has natural variability. They have no idea. The medieval warm period, when Greenland got its name, and when they had vineyards in northern England and all the rest, it was a great time for the world. It was a great time for liberty. It was a great time for science. It was a great time for the arts. It was a great time for personal freedom. The warming temperatures were a good thing. Then you had this big cold patch for centuries. And that was not such a good time for the world. And you can imagine if we'd had this crowd around in the 18th century, they'd have been saying, oh, we need to somehow figure out how to keep this coal trough we're in going. It's crazy. Even if you could do it, it would be crazy to try and impact the natural variability of the climate, even if you could do it. And to spend trillions, Richard, which is what they're proposing to spend on trying to reduce the global thermostat by 0.03 of a degree. And you think what you could do with all those trillions, and it doesn't matter what your taste is, whether you want to invent some fantastic new gizmo to listen to Miley Cyrus on, or you want to send a great mission to Mars, or you want to cure malaria in the third world, or if you're like the Clinton Foundation, your big cause is diarrhea in Africa. For the trillions that you are proposing to spend on lowering the global thermostat in the year 2100, you could dry up every case of diarrhea in Africa, and the Clinton Foundation would be able to say, mission accomplished. We are now a diarrhea-free Clinton Foundation, and we're going out of business. And that's the point, Richard. It's this malign alliance between a very narrow branch of science and the greatest pretext for big government anyone's ever devised. That's my view of it, Richard.
Yes, sir. I agree completely. And I just wanted to thank you also for, I know you've paid a heavy price for taking a personal stand for truth and freedom. And I just wanted to thank you. And I'm sure there are thousands of people out there you've enlightened as well. I just know the Michael Mann hockey stick thing is just awful.
No, that's true. But we will, if we have to go to the Supreme Court of the United States, which I must say, I never expected would be words that would pass my mouth. I thought that was like content farms in Macedonia. I thought it was a phrase that most people have no use for, but it looks like this thing might go all the way to the Supreme Court, and if it does, we will eventually win that thing. Because the point to bear in mind about this is it's the greatest pretext for big government that has ever been devised. That's why 193 countries have signed on to it. Because whatever kind of big government you're in favor of, doesn't matter whether you're like Obama and the European Union, where you like this kind of hyper micro-regulated kind of big government where there's a bazillion and one regulations for every aspect of life, or you're just some one-man psycho state like North Korea, which has signed on to the Paris Climate Accord, or you're just your average rinky-dink banana republic where you're like the police chief in reflector shades and you're this week's president for life. The climate is the perfect cover for big government that's ever been devised. At their Monday night poker game in hell, Hitler, Stalin, and Mao must be sitting around thinking, oh, it's about the future of all our children. Why the hell didn't we think of that? What is brilliant? We'd still be in power if we'd thought about that. It's basically a sentimentalized totalitarianism, and it's got no, and this idea that it's non-binding is hilarious. It's apparently a non-binding treaty, but Jean-Claude Juncker says it takes 4 years to pull out of it. That's how non-binding it is. Mark Stein for Rushmore to come. From Politico, could the Russia investigation reveal Trump's tax returns? The plot thickens, folks. He's apparently been hiding his tax returns in the back channel. But the Russia investigation is on top of it. They're going to get into the back channel and they're going to extract his tax returns. We'll see him at last. Yes, America's Anchorman is away, and this is your undocumented Anchorman, honored to be here live on America's #1 radio show from the pulsating heart, the throbbing heart of New York City. We are live from New York with Mr. Snerdley and Mike behind the glass, and we are 2 hours away from the decision that President Trump will be announcing at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. President Trump will tell us whether he's going to pull out or whether he's going to stay in of this Paris Climate Accord. And Rush he was talking yesterday about how normally when he goes away, it's a slow day. And he's right. He does usually pick the kind of slow periods to take off, like the Boxing Day and post-Boxing Day, Bank Holiday Thursday and all the rest of it. But he is actually offered a critical time. He's going to be back next week. But this is an interesting time. Meanwhile, the Russian investigation being ramped up. The news channels are all excited because Comey is going to be testifying soon. And there's still all this stuff about, the back channels. I love the way in the media, there's words you never hear of from one decade to the next, and then suddenly they're everywhere, like back channels in the news. I can't remember the last time I heard the word. I thought back channel was a character in the X-Men. He has the mutant power to disappear up his own back channel, much like this Democrat investigation that the Congress are doing into the Russian thing. It's actually a bizarre and stupid fishing expedition to find something. It's as everyone says, it's basically not Watergate, it's Whatevergate. But that it'll be like Scooter Libby. If they interview enough people, if they investigate enough people, because this is how it works when the FBI are involved. That if the FBI interview, I actually had an FBI special agent telling me on an unrelated matter. For one reason or another, I found myself sitting in a room with an FBI agent not so long ago. And she said I asked her at one point, after we talked around the subject we were there to discuss after a couple of hours, well, what do you think's really behind all this? And she said, well, I've been in the FBI for however many years, and oftentimes we'll investigate something for 2 or 3, 4 years, and we won't actually ever find out what was the real thing behind it. So we just nail them on mail fraud or wire fraud. and that's how it's going to go here. It'll be like Scooter Libby. They'll have a massive investigation into this Russia thing, which nobody knows. When there's no evidence of collusion. What would that look like? What would that look like anyway? But at some point, someone will misremember something, and he'll say the wrong thing to some FBI guy, and he'll be off to jail. He'll be the Martha Stewart of this thing. And then Trump will be completely discredited because someone who once stayed at a Trump resort and may well have been seen with Trump in the bar late at night or at the 16th hole out on the golf course will have made a false statement to the FBI, and the whole thing will come tumbling down. I want to say a word, too, about something else Rush spoke about yesterday, which is the other thing that's been in the news. This Kathy Griffin holding up the severed head of Donald Trump. And I don't really know who Kathy Griffin is, except that she's on with Anderson Cooper at New Year's Eve. They seem a very nice couple. I assume they're very happy together. They seem admirably suited. But I have no idea other than that who she is. And she's holding up a severed head. Well, the interesting thing to me is that there's two things here. First is that I actually think the left gets turned on by this, the idea of the thought somewhere. That's why under the Bush presidency they wrote novels fantasizing about assassinating Bush. They made films about assassinating Bush. And they get turned on by it. The good news is they're not quite where the ISIS guys are yet. The ISIS guys actually like sawing the heads off people. And they find it very easy. James Mitchell I interviewed James Mitchell, who's the guy who waterboarded Khalid Sheikh Mohammed a few months ago. He's basically, as he will tell you rather ruefully, America's torturer. He's the waterboard guy. He's basically a psychologist who developed means of getting information out of terrorists. And he interviewed Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and he's talking to him about decapitating Daniel Pearl. And James Mitchell asks Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, was it difficult decapitating Daniel Pearl? Meaning that no matter what kind of ruthless, sick guy you are, sawing the head off another human being would, you'd think, be something you have to psych yourself up to be able to do. And Khalid Sheikh Mohammed gave this kind of breezy answer to James Mitchell, saying, no, it wasn't really easy at all. As long as you make sure, you've got your scimitar that's all sharpened, you're not trying to use the old blunt one. It's perfectly easy to slice a guy's head off. And that's what those ISIS guys find. They're big on decapitation, and they find it easy to do as long as they've got the sharpened scimitar. And the frisson of that's what you see in that Kathy Griffin thing, and that's what you see in the left at the moment. It's the glamour of violence. It's the glamour of depravity. And occasionally they'll put masks on, and they'll go and loot and burn. If they're protesting, I don't know, Charles Murray at Middlebury College, they'll go and beat up a middle-aged lady professor who's made the mistake of inviting him. But they don't quite have the guts to actually saw people's heads off yet. But they get turned on by it. So that's why they think it's cool. Kathy Griffin thinks it's cool to actually be standing there with the severed head of Donald Trump. She thinks it's a turn-on. It's a turn-on for the left. And in a sense, they're pathetic. I mean, say what you like about these ISIS guys, but when ISIS recruits on social media and they get these misfits sitting in basements all over America and Canada and Britain and Europe who think, wow, I'd like to saw guys' heads off, and they go off and join ISIS, at least they actually saw the heads off. It's not like an artistic statement. It's not something edgy that's just disconnected from what it means to really do that. And so in a sense, that image exemplifies the emptiness of the left, that everything is an attitude. And that's bad in and of itself, because when you're holding up the severed head of Donald Trump, you're basically, the way the left is always accusing the right of otherizing people. If someone says something, if Donald Trump says something about Muslims, they're saying, oh, well, it's the right's fear of the other. They're otherizing him. It's this leftist social justice thing they do. Oh, they're otherizing the transgendered. They're otherizing gays. They're otherizing Muslims. That's what Kathy Griffin is doing there. She's dehumanizing not only Trump, but people who support Trump. She's otherizing Trump and saying, yeah, I'm holding up Trump's head, but they're not really human conservatives, are they? So it doesn't matter if I'm holding up Trump's head. That's the one thing I want to say about that. But the other thing is, I'm struck by the heartlessness of the left. People are actually being decapitated around the world right now. So it's not some wacky thing that doesn't happen in reality. Actual people have their heads sawn off. And for the most part, when it comes to Westerners who get their heads sawn off, they're not right-wing people. They're not conservative people. For the most part, they're actually on the same side as Kathy Griffin and the left. In my state, New Hampshire, there was a guy called James Foley who had his head sawed off by ISIS. He was kidnapped by Raqqa, and they sawed the guy's head off on camera. And James Foley was a journalist. And he wasn't a journalist who writes right-wing columns saying we need to do something about Islamic terrorism. He was someone who was interested in the stories of these people. He was out traveling around in that part of the world because he was connected to them through our common humanity. And that's why he was there. Same with Daniel Pearl in Pakistan. Daniel Pearl wasn't someone who was in any sense right-wing. Daniel Pearl was there because he wanted to hear the stories of these people so that, as was said at the time, that he could get their story out. And these guys capture these people. As I said, they're not right-wing in any sense at all, and they saw their heads off. And these are the people, James Foley and Daniel Pearl, who would be, if they were still around and they were still living in the United States, they would be looking at Kathy Griffin, they would be looking at Amy Schumer, they would be looking at Katy Perry. They would be on that side. They're not people who listen to Rush. They're not people who watch Fox News. They're not right-wing in any sense. They're on Kathy Griffin's side. And they got their heads sawn off. And as I said, this happened to this guy, James Foley, in my state. It's a small state. And he was from an old New Hampshire family. I happen to have a slight connection with his uncle, of all people. And you wouldn't think that if you were an old New Hampshire family in the year 2017, in the second decade of the 21st century, you would have to worry about your family members having their heads decapitated, about being decapitated. You wouldn't think that this would be happening actually in Western cities. A few months ago, last summer, I went to the funeral at Rouen Cathedral in France of Père Hamel, the Catholic priest who was decapitated during Mass. I spoke to some of the nuns who'd witnessed this. Drummer Rigby, the British soldier who was decapitated in Woolwich in broad daylight on the streets of London. These are real people in the second decade of the 21st century, citizens of Western nations who were decapitated. As I said, I'm not someone who seeks out people who knew people who had their heads sawn off, but I just happened one minute I'm talking to some nuns, and they see their priest getting his head sawn off, and then you happen to be in New Hampshire, and there's a guy there who had his head sawn off by ISIS. None of this is real to Kathy Griffin. She doesn't think this is a thing. She doesn't seem to realize that real heads of real American liberal progressives are being sawn off. She doesn't seem aware of it. It's just a joke. It's a fashion statement. Donald Trump's severed head is an accessory to her. And this is bizarre to me, but it's revealing about the heartlessness of the left. That if you do happen to be on a do-gooder mission in Pakistan or out in Syria, and you happen to fall into the hands of ISIS or the Taliban or Boko Haram or whoever the hell it is, and you do happen to find yourself there, held prisoner for a while before they actually decide, well, the guy who makes our snuff videos is here now, and he's ready to film you getting your head sawn off. In that time, think about how Kathy Griffin and all the other people who profess to have the great liberal virtue of empathy, progressive leftist empathy, don't actually feel a damn thing about you. That it's a joke to them. That they don't even seem to know that in the second decade of the 21st century, citizens of Western nations are being decapitated. It's just an edgy style accessory for her. And that's what was revealing about that Kathy Griffin moment. It's just a style accessory to her. And I regret that she won't be there on the next New Year's Eve at CNN because, it'd be great if she could make it a running joke. And as the clock strikes midnight, she could be standing there holding Anderson Cooper's severed head. Wouldn't that be cool and edgy? They don't care. And it's revealing. If you do happen to make the mistake of going to Raqqa to hear the exciting stories of your fellow man and why they're upset about American foreign policy, and if instead they take you prisoner and they saw your head off, remember that. In the end, the left doesn't care about you, Kathy Griffin doesn't care about you, and your severed head is just a style accessory to them. Mark Stein for Rush. We'll take your calls straight ahead. Let's go to Michael in Jerseyville, Illinois. Michael, you're live on the Rush Limbaugh Show. Great to have you.
Good afternoon, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing good. What's on your mind today?
Well, I'm thrilled to talk to you, but I just wanted to call in and say that I just don't think there's a better time to be a conservative in America than right now.
That'll be news to some of the Republicans in Congress. What's so great about now, Michael? Why is it now?
Well, it's just, I think the optimism. I have wanted to see a non-politician take over the White House for years.
Right.
And I think the closest we came to it was Reagan.
Right.
And just to hear him say the things that he's saying and do the things that he's doing, and to see him being attacked by Republicans and Democrats alike, to me that tells me we're on the right track.
Yeah, he basically is at war with both political parties, and as Rush has been saying, it's the Republicans that are actually, as a practical matter, obstructing his agenda. But you're right that what was fun on the campaign trail is that he just said what we all know people say when they get together, and they just let their instincts take hold. So nothing he said sounds crazy to just regular folks. It's only amongst this professional political class that actually that anything he says sounds kind of out of the realm of normal, Michael.
Well, I think a lot of things that he was saying just impressed me, and it was just the fact that it was what America wants,
right?
And it wasn't what the normal, establishment would tell us, what they thought we wanted to hear. And what makes me so happy to be a conservative today is when I look at some of these so-called liberals on you name the channel. I mean, and I don't mean to sound so insulting, but just the stupidity, the level of stupidity. I mean, do they think that the normal liberal Democrat is that stupid? I mean, I have Democrat friends. They're smart people. And certainly conservatives, Trump talks to us like we're smart. He knows who we are.
Right. Yeah, and what was refreshing about him is he would his reaction to, for example, when everyone went bananas and he was talking about a so-called Muslim ban, he was reacting to a terrorist attack the way a normal person reacts to the terrorist attack, as opposed to, say, John Kerry, who, even while they're like sweeping the streets of blood, is saying, oh, this has nothing to do with Islam or whatever. In other words, Trump's instincts are actually closer to where the public conversation is on these topics, Michael. That's what's actually that was actually what was refreshing on the campaign trail. And I want to pick this up in a couple of minutes, because there's actually a story in Politico that I think illustrates perfectly the difference between where normal human discourse is on these subjects and actually the way politicians cover them. It's a headline out of Politico today: GOP budget woes leave lawmakers in the dark. And it's got this great opening sentence: the federal budget process is so broken that lawmakers are now preparing to write spending bills without even knowing how much total cash they've got to play with. In other words, they're budgeting blindfold. They have no idea. They're budgeting blind. Yes, Russia's out today. Hillary has been lengthening her excuses as to why she lost the election. She didn't really lose the election. It was stolen from her by, I think it's up to 24 different excuses she has now. Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia. And as I said, my grandfather was a Macedonian content farmer, and we often think about, gathering on the porch and recalling the old days on the Macedonian. He never thought that the old content farmers he left behind in Macedonia would one day steal the U.S. presidential election. They are gnarled, hard-working Macedonian peasants, and the way they were able to reach out and steal the election from a well-oiled machine headed by John Podesta is impressive. If you're a Macedonian content farmer and you want to blow the lid off that, you want to tell us how you did it, then call us on 1-800-282-2882. It works from Macedonia. Go on, try it. It's easy. You can do it. 1-800-282-2882. We love to hear from you, Macedonian content farmers. Put down your Godulka and give us a call. If you're wondering where Rush is and you're thinking Father's Day is coming up, and Rush normally has some great advice for holidays like that. You know as well as I do what is the perfect Father's Day gift. It's a manly gift for Father's Day. It is a man. I should try and get an octave and a half lower. It's a manly. It's a full Barry White manly gift for Father's Day. You can take out a membership in Rush 24/7. That way, your dad will have a manly gift for Father's Day that will last all year round. He will get not only a full year of Rush on the radio, but he will get him in any other medium he cares to explore. You can watch Rush on the Ditto Cam. You can read his thoughts in transcript form. And if they come up with something other than audio, video, and text, they will live stream it to your head. No, it'll be in your cerebral cortex. All part of the Rush 24/7 gift membership. And right now, if you subscribe, if you go to rushlimbaugh.com and take out a Rush 24/7 gift membership for your dad this Father's Day, he will receive a free Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Anti-Leftist Studies car magnet that he can stick on the back of his vehicle, and they will know that he is no pajama boy. He's not a snowflake. He is all man. And he's got a Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Anti-Leftist Studies car magnet. It's a perfect Father's Day gift. You know, people get kind of worried around Father's Day. A guy might be going through a midlife crisis. He's starting to watch MSNBC. He's beginning to find Kathy Griffin funny or whatever. You can forestall all this by just going to rushlimbaugh.com and getting him a gift membership in Rush 24/7 as the perfect Father's Day gift. You really do not need to worry about anything else. This is the headline of the day. I've been looking at this, and I don't really know what to make. Doctors warn women against putting wasp nests in their vaginas. You would not think they needed a public service announcement for that. But I guess that's where the big... I should probably be doing this. Hi, I'm Mark Stein. You may know me from occasional guest hosting stints on the Rush Limbaugh Show. Ladies, think twice before putting wasp nests in your vagina. Don't try this at home. Wasp nests in their vagina. Women are being warned. This is from The Sun, Rupert Murdoch's Sun, the biggest selling newspaper in Britain and Europe. Women are being warned against trying a bizarre new trend that suggests using ground-up wasp nests to rejuvenate their lady parts. It's a thing, you know. I hate this, don't you? Like, it's when it's your big wedding anniversary, or you renew your vows and you take the honeymoon suite in Palm Beach or the Bahamas, and it's like special, and the night is going so great, and then you know, your missus wants you to try something a little different, and you're anxious to please her, and you've had a couple of margaritas too many, and she gets out the wasp's nest, and it's apparently a thing, and you don't know how to do it. But yeah, that's very true. Mike says it's a different kind of buzz. Yeah, some buzzes you don't want to hear. Anyway, doctors are warning women against that. By the way, if you're on Obamacare, you're screwed. They don't cover that. So if you've got Obamacare and you've been basically putting all the old wasp nests. By the way, I gather that the Russian back channels are absolutely filled up with wasp nests. All those babushkas who were in lead with Jared Kushner, they love the war. Anyway, that's the headline. That's the headline of the day. I don't know what it'll come before the Supreme Court at some point. Hobby Lobby will go to the Supreme Court against having to fund, subsidizing wasp nests. Actually, it's like the old days, isn't it? This is how it's come full circle. In the old days, you used to have to put leeches on that cure everything. Now it's wasps' nests. And, leeches do work. And they're cheap and affordable, but so are wasp nests. In New Hampshire, we have them. I've got them under every eave. Huge. I've got a wasp farm. And I know I could, every lady part in the county is taken care of. Anyway, that's a headline. That's a headline from That's a real headline from the newspapers. I do not know what the world is coming to. We are less than 90 minutes away from discovering whether Donald Trump is going to pull out of, not the Russian back channel, he's there to stay in that, whether he is going to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. Accord de Paris, c'est fait. I'm looking at the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, where they've got a big thing saying the Accord de Paris, c'est fait, which means it's a done deal, you can't get out of it. The guy who has a business card saying President of Europe, Jean-Claude Juncker, has told Trump, and he slapped him around. He said, now listen to me, you wimp. You're not getting out of this deal. It's 4 years to get out of this deal. You think you can get out of this deal? Read the small print. You're stuck in this deal till 2021 at least, and by then you ain't even going to be president. So it's going to be President Joe Biden with his brand new super PAC who's going to be getting all the credit for getting out of that deal. You can't get out of the Paris Climate Accord in 4 years. We will find out whether Trump is the man we think he is, or whether he's going to take being slapped around by a former Luxembourg foreign minister in about an hour and 20 minutes. He's waiting for this show to go off the air. So if you think his spine needs stiffening, then give us a call and stiffen his spine. And if you are the kind of person who actually thinks this stupid climate accord is going to do anything for the climate, then give us a call, 1-800-282-2882, because I love hearing it does as much good for me as grabbing a couple of wasp nest and just shoving them up my shorts. It's just fantastic. I love to hear from liberals on this show, so give us a call, 1-800-282-2882. And what I love about this is that this is the only country on the planet that calls it the Paris Climate Accord. We've been told that there's 193 countries that have signed this thing. 192 of them call it the Paris Climate Treaty, because that's actually what it is. It's a treaty between foreign nations. And when foreign nations reach agreement on things, they have a treaty. But this is called a Paris Climate. Only in America is it called a Paris Climate Accord. And that's because Obama didn't dare take it to Congress, didn't take it to the United States Senate, who are supposed to ratify treaties, so it's an accord here. And that in itself tells you everything that's wrong with it. It's a treaty between foreign nations. If 193 foreign nations get together and agree on something, then that should be ratified by the United States Senate. And even if he didn't want to pull out of this thing, he could actually say, well, I disagree with Barack Obama going all George III on you and presuming that his word goes and nobody else matters, and he could just kick it into the United States Senate and invite them to take ownership of this thing. But no other country calls it the Paris Climate Accord. It's a treaty in France, it's a treaty in Slovenia, it's a treaty in Kazakhstan. If you're down on the old content farm in Macedonia, the Macedonian content farmers are saying, well, I think this Paris Climate Treaty will do wonders for content farming in Macedonia. That's why we need to support it. Yeah? And that's how everybody else on the planet calls it. It's a climate treaty. But here it's this phony baloney climate accord, and hopefully in an hour and a quarter, we will be out on this thing. We are on climate treaty deathbed watch. It's like a wasp's nest has been stuck up that thing, and it's going out of business. Mark Stein in for Rush. We'll take your calls straight ahead. Mark Stein for Rush. Let's go to Margaret in New York City. Margaret, you're live on America's #1 radio show. What's on your mind today? Hi, Margaret.
I'm a genetically modified Macedonian content writer.
Really?
Yes,
wow.
And I work out of the soon-to-be Paris-accorded sanctuary city of New York.
That's true. So you're a genetically modified Macedonian content farmer. Is that like the Rachel Dolezal of Macedonian
Kind of
content?
like I'm Irish.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's in the general area of Macedonia. Close enough. I was on the Irish-Macedonian border.
Property value now that I'm living in a soon-to-be Paris-accorded sanctuary city.
Yeah, you will have... When the rest of America goes to hell, you will have all the benefits of that Paris Climate Accord in Manhattan. You know, when the rest of America is broiling, it'll be 54 and cloudy on 6th Avenue. You'll have no problems with that.
No problem with my real estate.
But you're Irish by way of Macedonia, or are you Irish and just transitioning to Macedonian? Is that like
I'm transitioning to Macedonian.
Okay. Well, I think on this day we should, out of solidarity with Hillary, we should all transition to Macedonian. The Macedonians are getting a bum rap on this thing because Hillary is blaming them for stealing the election from her. Do you find you're a victim of Macedoniphobia these days?
I think I want to walk outside with the hat that says "Make Macedonia Great Again."
Yeah, let's. Well, they are great. They just stole they got their guy elected president. They stole the election for their guy. How great is that?
Yeah, but Hillary's trying to make us look bad now.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm all for.
And that was a bad rap she gave us yesterday.
Yeah. Well, the next Macedonia. By the way, when is the Macedonian March down Fifth Avenue with Bill De Blasio, Macedonian National Day March, whatever it is, whoever the patron saint of Macedonia.
He hasn't sent out that memo yet.
Really? Well, I'm going to look at that parade because I'm happy to be. You know, I totally resent the Russians stealing the election. I'm with Hillary on that. I think it's outrageous. But the minute she said the Macedonians stole the election from her, I thought, well, God bless them. You know, they've had a tough break. They were part of the I can't remember. Wait a minute. They were part of the Ottoman Empire, and then they were part of Yugoslavia, and then when they tried to join the European Union, Greece, which has a province called Macedonia, refused to recognize Macedonia unless it had a name other than Macedonia. Which is, you know, imagine if you said that, if America said that to Canada, oh, you can join NAFTA, but we don't like this name Canada, you'll have to call yourself something else. That's what the European Union, so the Macedonians have had a bum rap, and now, God bless them, they've stolen a presidential election in the United States. And I think that's a real accomplishment, Margaret. Congratulations to you and your fellow Macedonians.
Well, Mark, I have to say I actually feel like a victim now because Hillary lost and now I'm out of work. But actually you helped me because you brought up the I'm going to start raising wasps. I'm going to start a wasp farm and I'm going to get away from the Macedonian content farming. So now I'm going to go to wasp raising.
You're going to switch from content farming to wasp farming. Okay. I'm not going to say I'm grateful for I'm grateful for the call, Margaret, but we mean that seriously, folks. Don't try that at home. Please don't try that at home. Margaret, sit down carefully after the call, please. Thank you very much. Great to have you with us on the show today. She kind of tied it all together. The Paris Climate Accord, Hillary's lost election, and the difficulties for those who use wasps' nests for medicinal purposes only, as they say, and that's what Kathy Griffin should have done. I mean, it would have been a feminist statement if she'd just been standing there holding up a great big wasp nest with and waving that around. But she then we would have tied together all the big stories today. Now we're getting word that that Trump is going to exit the Paris climate deal. But there may be a few qualifications to that. It may be the old hokey pokey. May put his left foot in, his left foot out, in, out, shake it all about. And so we're getting a bit of the old little bit pregnant kind of vibe on this, that he'll be mostly out but a little bit in, or mostly in but a little bit out. So the plot thickens. But we are just over an hour away from finding out how that will go. He has said that he's hearing from a lot of people both ways on this. That has been Trump's position on this climate deal. I preferred it this time last year when he was just saying this thing is rubbish. And what was fascinating to me at the time was the amount of energy that people invested in it. President Hollande of France, if you recall that this thing happened after the big terrorist attack in France, and he said the biggest signal we can send to the terrorists is by coming together to sign this treaty. Oh, it's now gone up to 195 countries. I was wrong when I said it was only 193. There's 195 countries that have signed on to this thing. I don't know whether have a couple more joined. Is the Cook Islands in? Oh, they're part of New Zealand. That doesn't count. Okay, is Tuvalu in on this? I don't know. Anyway, everyone's gone in on this thing. And Monsieur Hollande said the best thing we can do after the terrorist attacks in France, after all these dead people at the Bataclan Theatre and the French sports arena, the Stade de France, is to come together to sign the climate agreement. That'll send a really strong message to the jihadists. And this over-investiture in this nonsense is a big part of the problem. I'd prefer no qualifications, but right now it looks like we're going to be a little bit in, a little bit out. We'll see how that goes in just over an hour. Mark Stein for Rush. We're a little more than an hour and a couple of minutes away from President Trump's decision on the Paris Climate Accord. I met this lady earlier today, Ronna Romney McDaniel. She was on TV this morning, and she said that voters will reject the GOP if we don't fulfill campaign promises. And as Mr. Snerdley has scrawled underneath, damned right. And some of those promises are difficult, and some of them take time, but this one isn't difficult, and it doesn't take time. And that is why it will be important as far as the Trump base is concerned. Coming up, the Paris Climate Accord. Will it be dead? Yes, America's Anchorman is away, and this is your EIB Anchor Baby, just snuck into the country through the Russian back channel. It'll be years before anybody succeeds in closing off that route. I want to deny what Rush said yesterday, which is that he would be here today, except that Mr. Snerdley had already pre-scheduled the guest host, and so he was not allowed to come in and guest host for the pre-scheduled guest host. That is not, there's no truth to the rumor that I was here this morning and Rush came in and he had to be escorted from the building because he's supposed to be taking a day off. That's not true. Rush was just trying to get me into trouble. Rush will return next week. He has a couple of days' business that he cannot do anything about, but he will be here next week. We are 53 minutes away from learning what the president's decision will be on the Paris Climate Accord. The question was whether he was going to stay in, whether he's going to pull out, and there is now talk that he's going to be in, out, shake it all about. That some of it we're going to keep and some of it we're going to leave. We will find out at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 midday Pacific, when the president makes his decision, announces his decision on the Paris Climate Accord. Meanwhile, we are getting more and more into the weeds on this Russia investigation. Let me just say, first of all, there shouldn't be a Russia investigation. They've been doing this now since last summer. And I would be interested to know what actually started this investigation, because there is nothing to prevent an incoming government functionary a few weeks before he takes office reaching out and making contact with people in other countries. All the back channels is where diplomacy happens. Everyone says this about what the groupthink in media is incredible. Back channel is now suddenly a bad word. Back channel wasn't a bad word when Barack Obama was up his back channel with that Ayatollah over in Tehran cooking up the deal. That was all done through back channels, because if they'd been sitting down and doing it at press conferences, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. That was all. The back channels is where the Iran deal happened. But now back channels is a bad word, and so we have this stupid investigation. And it's the precise, there is actually nothing to justify this investigation. There is no there. And it's getting wider and wider and wider. My old friend Nigel Farage, the leader of UKIP, the guy who was responsible for Brexit, he's now been named a person of interest in the so-called Russia investigation. And his response ought to be, screw off out of here, you losers. For a start, he's not American, he's a British subject. And secondly, if he wants to meet with Russians and if he wants to tell Trump what some Russian guy said, why can't he? I don't even get this. Russia is a ramshackle great power, and it has its interests in the world, and sometimes its interests coincide with ours and sometimes they don't. But for example, it does less damage to the United States than, for example, Mexico does, which has sent, whatever it is now, 77% of its population across the Rio Grande. And nobody minds. You can have all the back channel. You don't need a back channel with Mexico. It's the world's biggest front channel. There's millions just coming through the front channel across the Rio Grande. Nobody cares. Nobody says, Trump, someone who has a business ties to Donald Trump's son-in-law was heard to be attempting to set up a back channel with the deputy tourism minister of Mexico. Nobody cares about any of that. But Russia, Russia, you're allowed to talk to Russians. My little girl is in St. Petersburg at the moment on one of these goofy kind of exchange type things, living with a Russian family. It's perfectly legal. You'd never know it from this crazy coverage. It's perfectly legal to talk to Russians. And it would be a problem if it wasn't. And actually, this call that they have, this call they leaked, where the Russian ambassador says, comrade, we'd be better off doing this on the back channel because the Americans are probably listening to the call right now and they'll leak it. And they leaked the call to prove that, in fact, they are eavesdropping on him. The issue here, the issue to me, I will just throw this out there, and I hope we get onto this, is that something very odd happened during the last election campaign, which is that the United States government actually began eavesdropping on the opposing party's election campaign. Now, we've heard Hillary complaining about these content farmers in Macedonia getting into John Podesta's emails, and yeah, it's difficult to do things, because these Macedonian content farmers, they're crazy guys. Once they get face down in the ouzo late at night and they think, let's hack into John Podesta's email, he's got that elaborate password called password, and they get in there. And you can't do anything about Macedonian content farmers, because the point is they're in Macedonia, so they're beyond your jurisdiction. But the United States government was devoting vast resources for the bulk of the presidential campaign to burrowing deep inside people connected with the candidate of the opposing party. Why? Why? That's what's interesting to me. Trey Gowdy's question to the guy Brennan, where he asked, Brennan was testifying, and Trey Gowdy asked, did any ambassador ask the question about seek to know the names of these people? And Brennan, there's a slightly curious look on his face, and he gives a slightly vague answer at that point. And we now learn that Samantha Power has been subpoenaed, along with Susan Rice, who's not going to testify. These are the people who Susan Rice asked for the unmasking of these names. Why? She's not an intelligence analyst. She's someone who receives intelligence briefings. She's not an investigator. She's not 007. She's not deep in the intelligence community trying to figure out what's going on the other side of the planet, who's rappelling into the presidential palace late at night on the other side of the world. She's nothing to do with intelligence. Samantha Power is nothing to do with intelligence. Why are they seeking the unmasking of their political opponents? This is real banana republic stuff. The Russian thing is just a pretext. It's actually straight out of George Orwell in 1984, where they're always going, Oceania has always been at war with East Asia. They've concocted an American-Russian permanent state of war as a cover for the fact that the ruling party is actually eavesdropping on senior members of the opposition party. Why? Why? What is the justification for that? It doesn't even matter if someone has business relations with them. You know, the Clinton Foundation has business relationships with all the sleaziest people on the planet, and I don't care. That's just the way it is. We were talking before the show started. We were talking in the control room about people here who's visited Russia, got children in Russia at the moment. And I was saying I'm horrified that if my daughter sends me an email saying she's marrying a Russian oligarch, anything worse than a Russian oligarch is one of these Kazakh oligarchs. The Kazakhs are in bed with the Clinton Foundation. The way the uranium all wound up in Russian hands was facilitated through a Canadian cutout to the Clinton Foundation. Nobody cares about that. Nobody's investigating it. I don't even care about it. The fact is there's sleazy business guys all over the planet, and if Bill Clinton wants to get in bed with Kazakh oligarchs, good luck to him. He's gotten to bed with all kinds of other people over the years, and if he has a good time getting in bed with Kazakh oligarchs, go for it. But this idea now that somehow if a guy is appointed deputy assistant under Secretary of State on November the 10th and December the 3rd, he's trying to have a private phone call with somebody in the Russian foreign ministry, that's somehow cause for the usual 7-year complete waste of time, money, no object, pointless federal investigation, is completely ridiculous. Back channel, all back channel means is We're not doing it at Radio City Music Hall, accompanied by full supporting orchestra and a kickline of Rockettes. We're having a private conversation. That's all back channel means. I'm watching. I arrived at in my hotel. I'm in New York City at the moment. I get into my hotel yesterday. I think I ought to find out what's going on in the world before I come and talk a lot of nonsense on the radio, sound like I don't know what's going on. I switch on the TV. It's on CNN. It's like another world there. It's like another planet. There's all these things that diplomats have done for centuries, right? Diplomats conduct. The point about diplomacy is you don't conduct it on Dancing with the Stars. It's supposed to be something you do discreetly, private contacts. Remember this guy Wilson? What was he called? James C. Wilson IV or whatever. This guy, he flew into Niger to investigate the yellow cake thing, and he had tea. He had tea in whatever the best hotel in Niger is. Anyway, it's probably very nice, actually. I don't want, if you're a Niger hotelier, I didn't mean to insult you. He has tea in Niger with his contacts. That all sounds a bit back-channel-y to me. That's what international relations are. You're doing it in the back channels until you decide it's ready to be moved up into the front channel. And this insane fever here, that if they just investigate. Hitchcock, Alfred Hitchcock, when he made a film, used to talk about the MacGuffin. That's the thing, that's the pretext for the film. It's the secret formula, or it's the bit of paper with the map on it. It's the thing that nobody cares about, but that starts the plot. And if you watch North by Northwest or the 39 Steps or whatever, there's some little, or the Lady Van, any of these thrillers, there's some little thing, the secret papers, the Nazis are trying to get it, the good guys are trying to get it, and nobody actually cares what it is, and they have a great caper for the next 2 hours trying to get hold of what Hitchcock called the MacGuffin. And Russia is the MacGuffin here. There actually is no MacGuffin. They're just chasing around. And as I said, the danger is that, as will be the way with the FBI, that if the FBI interviews 237 people, including Nigel Farage, okay, so now we've got federal policing agencies in the United States presuming to interview party leaders in the United Kingdom about this, that one of them somewhere along the way will say, I spoke to the guy on May the 18th, and it won't be May the 18th. He misremembered, and it was in fact April the 17th, and they'll nail him, and he'll be like Scooter Libby, and he'll go to jail for 6 months for lying to the FBI. And this thing is a complete waste of time. And by the way, Trump would have been within his right to fire Comey, even if he had said to him, this stupid Russia investigation is a waste of time. The standard here is it would be obstruction of justice if he was doing it for corrupt reasons. It's not corrupt if you say, well, look, you guys have spent a fortune looking at this nonsense since last July or June or whatever it was. You've been eavesdropping on me. You've been wiretapping all of us. And if there'd been anything, it'd be in the Washington Post and New York Times by now, and you haven't got it, so this is a waste of time. So why don't you go out and do something useful with the federal budget? He would be within his rights to do that, and he can fire James Comey, because James Comey's priorities are not the priorities of the Trump administration. It's within his rights to do that, and the only mistake he made was not firing that Comey guy on January the 20th. Mark Stein for Rush. We will take all your calls straight ahead. I want to say one more thing about this Mike Flynn business, because he's the one, that was a big thing for them when they took out Mike Flynn and as the so-called foreign agent in all this Russia thing. And it gets to the why it is there's no there, but you can always find a there. Because I found it, if you ask somebody, what did Mike Flynn actually do wrong? And just to be clear here, I've no use for Mike Flynn shilling for President Erdogan of Turkey, because I regard Erdogan of Turkey as actually a far greater menace to the civilized world than Putin is. So I got no interest in shills for Erdogan, and Mike Flynn was a little too cozy with the Turks and the Erdogan regime for my taste. But what is being the slender pegs on which this investigation is being hung? Earlier this year, Flynn registered with the Justice Department as a foreign agent for what he'd been doing for the Turks, and so you're thinking then it's revealed he should have registered. He registered, but he didn't register in quite the right way. And I've been trying to figure out what it is that he didn't. He was supposed he registered the income he'd received from the Turks by registering under the Lobbying Disclosure Act, but he was supposed to register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. So he registered with the left hand of the United States government, and instead of the left hand of the United States government saying, well, this is all well and good, but you're supposed to register with the right hand of the United States government, they got rid of him because although he'd actually registered, he'd registered under one law when he should have registered under another law. And people say, well, this is disgraceful. Flynn, he registered under the Lobbying Disclosure Act instead of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Why the hell? Who needs so many laws to register under? If you have to register as an agent for somebody lobbying the government, why isn't there only one? That way we would know whether somebody had registered or not registered, rather than, as in Flynn's case, he registered with the left hand of the government, but he didn't register with the right hand of the government. This is actually the problem. It's like when they talk about the intelligence community, there are 17 different intelligence agencies. We're told that all 17 intelligence agencies, including the Coast Guard's intelligence agency, are agreed that Trump was up to something. Why are there 17 intelligence agencies? This is the problem. Flynn registered with one branch of the government, and then they total him and take him out and whack him because he was supposed to register with an entirely different branch of the government. That's absolutely ridiculous. That's like, if you take out a subscription to Time Warner, and then Time Warner calls you back and said, oh, well, you took out a subscription to the wrong office, so your subscription doesn't count. This is actually the problem. This Byzantine bureaucratic morass that they're now mired in. We are apparently 27 minutes away from the great Satan pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. Do you remember that campaign ad that the climate guys made a few years ago? They said every time you what is it? It's like it's a non-wonderful life, but every time you take a long-haul flight, a polar bear loses its wings. And they made this campaign ad about polar bears dropping from the sky and landing on car roofs I think it was filmed in Chicago. Well, if you're in Chicago, stay inside. The polar bears are going to be dropping out of the skies. He's going to announce 26 minutes, apparently. He's pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. The polar bears are going to be dropping from the skies. The polar ice caps are about to melt. If you saw that film The Day After Tomorrow, where they're all sitting around in the New York City Library burning the books to keep warm because New York has been flash frozen. I come off the air here in New York in about 25 minutes. I'm going to try to get to the city limits by about 3:15 Eastern, because the polar ice caps will have melted and New York will be flash frozen. If you're listening to us in the Maldives, get out of there. There won't be a Maldives. You'll all be underwater tomorrow. Get the hell out of there now. You're a sunny Muslim. You should be living in Brussels or Paris or London. I didn't even know they had Muslims in the Maldives. Why aren't you in Western Europe like all the other Muslims? This is get the hell out of there now. You're going to be underwater. You're going to be completely underwater. Trump in about 25 minutes, this is like the scene You know, it's like the last 20 minutes of a Bond film where they're all running around in the in the cat suits, and Bond is looking for the big off button for the laser that zaps the world. Trump is going to fry the planet in 25 minutes. And if you're the climatological version of James Bond, if you're Al Gore, you should be in Trump's volcano now looking for the off button, because at the top of the hour, he's going to fry the planet. He's going to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord, and it's all over. We're going to broil. We're going to burn up, except for New York City, which will be flash frozen. There will be no more polar bears. The glaciers are all going to melt. All those Himalayan glaciers are going to, it's coming up to 3 p.m. Eastern. Do you know where your glaciers are? If they're in the Himalayas, they're gone, baby. They're gone. They're out of, Everest. All you need to forget about Everest. You can stroll up there in your T-shirt and shorts. You won't need to be bothered by Yetis. There'll be no abominable snowmen. The abominable snowmen will all be in a retirement condo in Florida. It's over. The planet is over. 23 minutes from now, President Trump is finally going to do it. Top of the world, Ma. He's going to blow this sucker. It's going down. It's counting down now. 23 minutes to go. And they're awaiting President Trump's decision on the Paris Climate Accord. They're all gathered there out in the garden in the White House. Run for your lives, you fools! Don't you know the whole powder keg's about to go up? It's all gone. Anyway, I feel very sorry for our listeners in the Maldives, our Maldives affiliate. The transmitter is going to be underwater in about 27 minutes. He's going to finally finally fry the planet in 22 minutes from now. Head for the hills. You probably think that it's not worth taking out a Rush 24/7 subscription, because you won't live long enough to get your full year's value of it by the time the planet is gone. What's the point of taking a Rush 24/7 subscription? Well, look, you're going to be living in a bunker. The United States is going to be frozen solid from here to the Mexican border when the ice caps melt, and you'll just be doing a bit of foraging, bit of ice fishing. And won't it be nice? You got long, boring days ahead of you, sitting in your ice fishing hut, hole in the ice, waiting for a nibble with 300 million people who all got to the 2 last fish before you. Won't it be nice on a hellish day like that to be able to listen to Rush 24/7, which means what it says. If you go to rushlimbaugh.com and you take out a Rush 24/7 subscription, you get Rush 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And he's probably in on this whole Fry the Planet scam. So he's going to have the out. Wherever they are, they'll be in some lair in the volcano, just like the Bond villain. There'll be like 27 of them who've all survived while you're ice fishing. And so he'll still be able to do his show. And so you will get your full value from your Rush 24/7 subscription. All you got to do is go to rushlimbaugh.com, take out a Rush 24/7 subscription, and you will have a grand old time, whatever the climate does. There's no better way to get through the coming apocalypse than to have a Rush 24/7 subscription. Let's go to Doug in Grand Rapids, Michigan. No matter how grand those rapids are now, after Trump's announcement, they're going to be killer rapids. Doug, it's great to have you on the show. Great to have you with us.
Hi, Mark. How are you today? Glad to talk to you.
Good. I'm doing good. What's on your mind, Doug?
Well, I was listening earlier, and you were talking about that Kathy Griffin thing, and
oh yeah,
there's a lot of people in that minority suffering from TBS.
What's TBS?
Trump derangement syndrome.
Oh, TDS. Oh, right. Okay, I thought TBS. I thought.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's Trump derangement syndrome. Yeah, that's true. A lot of that about.
And I take it in a different light. I take it seriously because this is my president. This is my country.
Right.
And I think that these people are actually calling out for people to do harm to our president.
No.
And at that point, it becomes treason.
Right. Right. No, I think you're right. I think when she's holding up the severed head, it's not enough to say it's just edgy comedy or whatever. I think she actually, I said that. I think they actually like that. They like that. But it reminds me of a column that some guy wrote just before the 2004 election, when he was actually begging for somebody to assassinate George W. Bush. And it was interesting to me because he said whatever it was, where's Lee Harvey Oswald when you need him? Where's John Wilkes Booth when you need him? And what was interesting to me is he doesn't want to actually be John Wilkes Booth himself. He doesn't want to be Lee Harvey Oswald himself, but he wants someone to do it for him. And I think you're right in that, Doug, that they actually would like it if they switched on the TV and some ISIS guy was sawing off Trump's head. They would love it, Doug.
No, it's really sick. It's something that has to be brought to the forefront that any of this stuff against our president or against our country, it was always called treason in the past. And
right.
It's just now being stated on the TV or in the news broadcast that these are treasonous activities. So it's, in my opinion, it's about time, because you can't basically go on any social media or whatever and threaten someone else. So we have people that, because they think they're, I call them appointed important people, that they can do this and cause change. And, I mean, change is one thing, but change should be for the betterment of the country as a whole. Whether you like the guy or you don't like the guy, or you like a policy or you don't like the policy, you work through the channels to make things improved with a consensus.
There's a couple of things there, Doug. They lost the election, and they can't accept that. And so, and in civilized societies, sometimes your party wins and sometimes your party loses. And if you don't accept that, then basically you are putting yourself on, at some point, on the same continuum as ISIS is on, which is that it's not about going down to your local school gym and casting a vote. It's about this so-called resistance. And that's why they're not interested now in talking about policy or persuading people or doing things to ensure they win the next election. They want to delegitimize this guy to the point where it becomes normal to wish for someone to saw his head off. And you're right, Doug, that the seductiveness of violence on the left has always been present. And it goes back to, it's the difference between the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And when the French Revolution descended into the terror, that's been present in leftist revolutions to one degree or another ever since. And it's why they get turned on. The left gets, the American left, the Western left gets turned on by these third world guys who kill their enemies, and they like it. Robert Spencer, who runs Jihad Watch, he talks a lot about the Muslim threat, and he goes around America giving speeches. And he went to Iceland to give a speech in Reykjavik a couple of weeks ago, and some social justice warrior slipped a combination of Ritalin and ecstasy, the drug ecstasy, into his drink while he was in a restaurant in Reykjavik after the speech, and he wound up in hospital. They tried to kill him. Depending on what your medical condition is, if you have that particular cocktail of Ritalin and ecstasy, it can kill you. They poisoned him. In other words, this is a guy, he can't argue against what Robert Spencer was saying about the jihadists. He thinks it's easier just to kill him. And so they're actually on the same continuum now as the Charlie Hebdo guys. That the seductiveness of violence on the left, and they're not quite there yet. So when Kathy Griffin is standing there holding up the severed head, it's not like the ISIS severed heads. Every time an ISIS guy holds up a severed head, there's another 47 losers all over the planet who say, wow, I'd like to join ISIS and saw people's heads off too. They're not quite there yet. but they're on the same continuum, which is that they're bored with electoral politics and the swings and roundabouts and the pendulum of electoral politics, and they basically now, they've disputed every single election, presidential election this century that they've lost. Bush wasn't legitimate. The Supreme Court selected him as president in 2000. 2004, something funny went on in Ohio and denied John Kerry the presidency. And now, this time round, it's the Russians. There's something wrong with you. When you dispute every election you lose, you're not just the sore loser. You're actually undermining the possibility of multi-party politics. You're actually undermining the idea that people should have a choice and that choice should determine the election result. And that's what these guys are doing. And that's the meaning of the severed head. You know, in the end, it's tribal, and we want to reduce ourselves to the same degenerate state as the Boko Haram guys. That's the subtext of what Kathy Griffin. It's all photoshopped, and they've done their best to make her look good, but she's actually in Boko Haram territory there. Mark Stein for Rush. More straight ahead. Mark Stein in for Rush on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. You know, I started this show pointing out that Hillary, among her 24 excuses now for why she lost the election, she blames it, among other things, on content farms in Macedonia. And I mentioned that I'm the grandson of a Macedonian content farmer who eventually got on the boat it's tough making a living in the content farming business in Macedonia, and eventually decided to get on the boat to Ellis Island, and here we are. And then we had Margaret, who was saying that she was Macedonian. She said she was getting out of the content farming business and was going into wasp farming. I had an email from Joanne who says, "Dear Mark, look up what content farmers are. It has nothing to do with agriculture." You begin to understand why the only jokes anybody gets now are when Kathy Griffin's waving a severed head around. It's like the only comedy that we can all share these days. Very odd to find that. We're only now 7.5 minutes away from Trump's decision on the climate pact, and Mr. Snerdley and I were talking about what the left is going to do. Because this isn't even one of these coalition of the willing things, like where they mocked it with George W. Bush. This is where there's 194 countries who have signed this thing, and there will be the United States, Syria, and Nicaragua who haven't. And Nicaragua is because the Paris Climate Accord isn't tough enough, and Syria, it's because the guy was about to sign it, and then they bombed and blew up the Syrian climate ministry in Aleppo or whatever the hell it was. So they didn't get a chance to sign it. So we ought to actually all come together for the sake of the Syrian global warming guy who never got to sign the thing. We're less than 7 minutes away, and they are going to go bananas if Trump pulls out at the top of the hour. And that's another reason to do it, because it's always worth doing things that drive your opponents nuts. And actually, that is how Trump won, and that is how he's at his most effective. We'll close things out in just a minute. The excitement is intense. Now, what was it Shakespeare said? Now is the winter of our content farm in Macedonia, whatever the first line of Richard III is. Now is the global climatological winter of the planet. It starts in about 2.5 minutes' time. They're all gathered outside at the White House. The podium is there. I understand the president is going to ritually slaughter the last polar bear on that podium as he pulls the lever, frying the planet, as he pulls out of the Paris Climate Accord. It all starts, it's hot, it's boiling, the polar ice caps are already melting in anticipation. We will break it all down for you on the radio tomorrow for Open Line Friday, the post-apocalyptic Paris Climate Accord edition of Open Line Friday. See you tomorrow.